I'm David Hepworth. Thanks for clicking this Word in Your Ear podcast, videocast thing for which there is no name. Mark Ellen and I have been creating in this line since 2007. And if any of it has met with your approval, then please click to subscribe because it helps. Leave a comment because we like to hear from you, and maybe even consider becoming a Patreon supporter because then, well, you'll be one of us. Visit patreon.com/wordinyourear for details.
Welcome to this. There's an old, and I think accurate rock music maxim that a band is only as good as its drummer. And if that's the case, then big in Japan, the Slits, the Creatures and Siouxsie and the Banshees have a lot to be grateful for. And for the fact that that drummer has finally written his memoir, The Absence. Budgie, very nice to see you.
Oh, well, how nice to be here. Thank you for getting up so early and meeting me on my, I'm an hour ahead, so
Yeah, you're aware. Is it Berlin?
I'm in Berlin. Yeah.
Do you agree with Mark's point at the beginning there where he said a band is only as good as its drummer?
Oh, of course, as a drummer.
Well, you're allowed to say that. Yeah, fine.
Well, I also am back in touch with my mentor, which is Nick Headon, Topper from The Clash.
Right.
And in my, if you like, apprenticeship, which was a long one, after Big in Japan, on tour with the Slits, and we'd been reworking some of the stuff they'd been doing live. But I watched Topper every night with The Clash, and that was on the Sort It Out tour. It was a very early tour when they were still playing city halls, and maybe they carried on playing city halls. I don't know if they got to the Wembley Arena scale. But it was just watching Topper, who was just ultimate kind of unflappable with swing. He added swing to punk rock. Should I Stay or Should I Go became something. I thought The Law was a killer. It was just the way he shuffled around on that song.
But it seems to be the case that a lot of groups really took off when they found the right drummer. And the Stones and the Beatles are two good examples, actually.
They are good examples. Deep Purple without Ian Pace, even Black Sabbath without Bill Ward. My favourite drummer of all time, whose name I'd probably forget, but the Welsh band, the three-piece from Wales, Budgie.
Oh, really?
There's a thing.
I love them. Homicidal, suicidal, in the grip of a tire fitter's hand. You are the biggest thing, says powdered milk.
Fantastic. So, but Budgie, the lead singer was, the leader was Burke Shelley. What was the name of the drummer? You can't remember. Okay, well, we'll look him up later.
Burke Shelley. And I'm going to say, you see, the other day I was listening to, you see, this is what you can do when you reach a certain age. You can listen to Humble Pie and talk about it.
Oh, absolutely. You're in the right place to do that.
That was mentioned in your book, wasn't it?
Yes.
Humble Pie's Rocking the Fillmore, which Mark and I are big believers in.
Oh, wonderful recording. You could hear bottles rolling around on the floor, right, in the quiet intros.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yes. Is it We Go Home on Monday and all that stuff?
It ain't not been a gas.
It's been a gas this time. It's really been a gas.
We love that record. Hallelujah, I Love Her So.
And I played that religiously every Saturday night. Just imagined what a concert like that must have been like. And I aspired to it. Jerry Shirley was the drummer.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And Jerry Shirley, if I listen now, and I listened then, but I didn't compute. I didn't listen and copy. It filtered. That he started every drum roll with a sort of snare, bass drum, and cymbal crash. So he didn't kind of go digga-da-digga-da-digga-da-digga-da bush. He went bush-da-digga-da-digga-da-digga. It was kind of like Bush was the intro.
Right.
Here I come. Crash, digga-da-digga-da-da. And there's one at the end as well. I think he was influenced a lot by Mitch Mitchell, Jimi Hendrix Experience. Who was also seemed to be playing everything kind of across the beat, everything you could think of putting in between. And I suppose Jimi Hendrix was an early version of Robert Fripp in many ways, as a director of his own band. Because I spoke to, I think it was Bill Rieflin, who sadly, before he died, we talked about. He was in with Fripp a long time, and I think it was what's his name, Gavin. He's one of he's the drummer from Porcupine Tree, Harrison, and. Fripp just said, I don't need to know. I'll have to do it in his brogue. I don't need to know, or I can't do a Cornish brogue, where the one is. I know where the one is. So you don't play, you don't need to. Instructions to a drummer, You
talk about all the drummers that you liked. John Bonham was one, I think, and you loved listening to Upsetters records and Desmond Decker. But the one person you couldn't admit to liking was Phil Collins, which just seems so funny now because all that changed in the 80s, and suddenly Phil Collins was absolutely the godhead, wasn't he?
Yes. I heard Phil Collins playing with Percy Jones on Brian Eno's albums. And I'm sure I read somewhere that Phil Collins was like, "Thank you, Brian. That was like a half-hour kind of mess around, and you made 3 albums out of it." No, I loved Bill Bruford and I loved Phil Collins, but I didn't know how they did what they did, so I had to kind of back burner them a while.
Going back to my point, do you think they're kind of in charge, the drummer, because they play the way they play, don't they? And therefore, everybody, it either works or it doesn't. I'm no musician, but it all seems to be pointless. Anybody talking to a drummer, telling them to do something different, because they do what they do.
But you get what you hire. Yes, I think you're lucky if you bring a drummer in and you go, "Wow, this is brilliant." And I think I was kind of fortunate in that way, that not that the drummers that preceded me didn't know what they were doing, but they were so unique. They could just about make it through the first recordings or the first shows. But you needed to have the ability to hold it together, which is why I mentioned Topper and probably all the other people we've spoken about. You can be way more advanced, or you can be simply self-taught, but you've got to fit, and you have to understand somehow without having to be told, because you don't listen, or telling everybody else what it is they need to do to sound good with you. You have to just show by example, I think. But it kind of also is weird. I do mention this in the book, the cleaning. Like drummers are maybe orderly. I know Keith Moon might not have appeared to be so orderly on stage, but I wonder. No, I doubt he went round cleaning the ashtrays in the morning on the bus.
Oh, is that an obsessive thing?
Oh, I know that David Beckham has it.
Yes, that's true.
That's true.
I do. In fact, you see, that's the beauty of, for me anyway, of writing, was I realized things about myself more than anybody else. And I do say somewhere that when it got rough, when things got tough, I would clean. And, go to my mum, the few things I can remember talking to my mum saying, "I'm bored." And my son, who's now 11, says, "I'm bored." And I'm so tempted to go, "There's a pot of Brasso over there." And
yeah, there you go.
Sorry.
But I don't have any. I have no cartridge cases from Ypres, from Dunkirk, which we had by the side of the fireplace. And she would say, "You can polish my brass ornaments," And I go, "Well, I'm okay, actually. I just nip out." But it was. I remember saying it was a kind of way of avoiding going somewhere, feeling something. I'd clean the house. In France, it was a huge house. And I literally I knew every corner of it, because Sunday was my cleaning day. This is rock and roll, man.
This is rock and roll.
So you put on a pinny on a Sunday and went round and with a feather duster.
With a duster.
It was a woodworker's apron.
Can we take you back to some early bits in the apprenticeship? There's an amazing bit of the book where you talk about being in a band who's in a cabaret. I think they're called Chuck and the Young Ones.
Chuck and the Young Ones.
And you were 14, I think, and you're playing in this sort of cabaret, sleazy nightclub. So describe what was that? What kind of bands were you supporting? Who else was on the bill?
We were always headlining because they couldn't afford 2 bands at a working man's club. And so,
and this was where, let's remind it.
So, okay, we're in the sort of zone of St. Helens. It's not even Liverpool. Liverpool was a big gig. If you went to Liverpool down the East Lancs Road, it's 10 miles away. That
was London town, wasn't it?
That was London town proper, yeah.
So it's rugby league territory we're talking.
We're talking rugby league. We're talking bingo. We're talking pints and pints of bitter.
Absolutely.
And we got to Wigan. We got to Widnes. Sankey, Runcorn.
Yes. All the flesh pots.
Yeah. And all the places in St. Helens. And it was like pubs in St. Helens. You used to have a band on a Friday, maybe. You'd hear the windows rattling. And we'd stand outside underage. But one day, we'd started... how do we do it? We started playing our own, idea of what a band might be. But there was this guy, Chuck, who came along and organised. I was 13, I think. It was only about a year after Mum died, I think. And the other guys were younger. They were still like 12. But they seemed older than me because...
What were you playing? What kind of songs?
Start off with... we start off with the Shadows. That was the backbone. We learned all the Shadows instrumentals. This meant that Chuck could change his jacket whilst the music didn't stop. Right. So that was the cabaret element. Bobby Bennett's one of my first Apache. I think that's where all the Banshees drumming came from. Yeah. And probably what I brought to the Slits. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, it's really true, that.
He's Bobby Bennett, and then later on the Glitter Band.
Brian Bennett, isn't it?
Bobby. Who's Bobby Bennett? Is he
I don't know.
Yeah.
He's a comedian you've just made up. It's Brian Bennett. Anyway.
Yeah, I like Brian Bennett better. And Wipeout by the Safaris. I used to play. They used to do down, and just go. I'd go like dub 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 dub. Try and.
You used to play with two rulers on a desk. Did you use that stuff at school?
I used to play with my hands on the skin of an old banjo with no strings. Right. It was a beautiful rosewood body. I don't know where it came from. I heard it was from Grandad, because I never met my mum's parents either. They'd gone before I was born. So there was a kind of a space in the house. There was a drawer with like things like for darning socks and the kind of blue mushroom that you put the sock over. There was also like a harmonica that was broken, a Jaws harp, and a kazoo, of course. And they were found objects. So I was okay. I had a drum head, and then I got, I think, a snare drum, and then it was down to the Magpie's Nest to try and piece together a drum kit. Magpie's Nest being the second-hand shop round the corner.
But you bought a drum kit with the money you made. This is another fascinating episode. From your obsession with budgerigars, because I always imagined the budgerigar breeding world was blokes in flat caps, and you, aged 13 or 14, or maybe even younger, were breeding budgerigars and selling them for 25 shillings a time.
I think it was definitely probably my dad's idea of keeping me occupied. There must have been a lot of what am I going to do? Because he was working all the time, and my brother and sister are 6 and 10 years older. So he's got a little lad who's kind of coming through puberty and teen angst. Not yet. Oh, that was to come. Yeah, so I used to go down to, what was it called? The Cambridge Arms or something, or the Traveller's Rest. It wasn't either of those, but it was basically a one bar downstairs, up a flight of stairs to a little room that was full of smoke, because everybody smoked. And they had flat caps on, and they had little cages, and it was budgies cheeping and gasping because they couldn't breathe. And I'd sit there for like an hour, maybe two, while the guys were obviously getting drunk away from the wife, because there were no women. And I dedicated myself to it.
But it seems so extraordinary. Somebody of that age would have found that world so attractive, because you became obsessed and you drew budgerigars on your school books, didn't you?
Well, there was a book, a really well-illustrated book, and I realised they were illustrations rather than they were like black and white photographs of like the budgerigars version of Crufts, where the prize budgie, and he was proud and probably stuffed. But I love the colours of all these, what the breeders got up to, the Lutinos and the albino and the rainbow ones that I mentioned. Yep, I don't know if I learned much, but my dad then helped me to, build the cages because he was a joiner by trade. So, and it kind of kept him occupied as well. I think we both needed occupying because we didn't really know. We were a bit of a loose end. And that's only something I realized again through the process of writing and thinking. It wasn't just you, me who lost mum. It was my sister, my brother, and my dad who lost his wife. And it's not selfishness. It's just not being able to process and think. And I always thought my first thing was I need to look after my dad, and the budgies are going to be it, But music came along, and the budgerigars, even with them being, my source of income, my sister would disagree. She said, "You didn't buy your drum kit. Your dad bought the drum kit." I might have put the deposit down, Which
why was it such a vibrant time in Liverpool when you were in all those bands? You're in a band with Paul Rutherford and you were big in Japan. Why do you think that was happening in Liverpool at that time?
I think there was certainly for me. Okay, from my personal thing, I'd gone to Liverpool to study fine art at Liverpool Polytechnic, and I'd done the first year in St Helens. I'd do what I wanted. I did photography, screen printing, silk screen printing, like lithography, the whole gamut with photography and painting, graphic design, you name it. Got to Liverpool, it was like in the fine art course. There's the room. I was saying, like, well, where's the graphics department? You don't go there. That's in the other street, somewhere else. I think after about a year, and something happened on the jukebox. The records changed from late 60s, early 70s rock to, Focus was losing its grip. Focus was losing its focus with Hocus Pocus. La 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 la. I love that record.
Hocus Pocus.
What a drummer.
Jan Ackerman. That's right, yeah.
There was Deaf School with a college band, and they had a record contract. They had a couple of albums out on Warner's, and we got to know them. I wanted the drum seat. I had my eye on Tim Whitaker's drum seat, but I didn't get there because Tim was big, and he was quite a character around college. But come the cusp of 76 into the 4/7s clash, 7th of the 7th, 77, somewhere around there. And there was, it wasn't Eric's club, it was a club called the New Cavern Club, which was opposite the old cavern, which was the premises that Eric's would eventually occupy.
I'm going to say, it's all around there, isn't it?
The New Cavern, the Revolution. The Revolution got shut down. We had to go up to the strip club upstairs somewhere, and that's where the Sex Pistols first played. And kind of when the Pistols hit the press, and the Banshees hit the press indeed as well, it caught our ear, and it caught our sense of we were not really getting what we wanted out of college. They were still stuck in abstract expressionism and late 60s American art. And it wasn't that we had anything better to put in its place, but it seemed that we'd all come together hoping to meet another bunch of misfits. In many ways, I left a band in St Helens because I went to Liverpool because it wasn't too far away, and I still had a candle lit for that idea of making some kind of progress. But once I started painting, I like anything else, I was 100%, dedicated. And that in the book that you haven't seen yet, I dug out my old sketchbooks from that time, and I did a lot of self-portraits. And there's one at the front of every chapter. And I looked back and went, geez, these have stood the test of time, hopefully. There's some of them that maybe haven't, but all around Liverpool as well, little drawings outside the Everyman Theatre or, some, those kind of places. Oh, there's something I missed out. Can I tell you quickly?
Yeah, go on.
There was that little band in Liverpool that I met up with two people. One was Terry, who was going out with, or maybe partner of, my social studies teacher. Her name was Dinah Dosser. I think she was the wife of Alan Dosser. And his friend was a chap called Bill Nighy. And Bill, so Bill and Terry played bass. Bill was the singer. And they were doing Rosalita by Bruce Springsteen.
Bill Nighy.
I don't think I knew this. Bill Nighy was in a band? Is this well known?
And he sang Rosalita.
And he sang Rosalita. Or is he keeping deathly quiet about all this?
This is an exclusive. Sorry, Bill.
It's fine.
I think he can bear it, can't he, really?
I hope so. And I did want to put it in there, and I just forgot. I think I forgot because it's such a moment. But they didn't have a guitarist.
We'll have to get him on. We had Peter Capaldi just a week ago talking about the band he was in Liverpool. So there we are.
Wonderful. So Bill, what happened was my mates came up from St. Helens, and they were so bad with drug paraphernalia. One of them was a real bad addict, and my friend, the guitarist, was going that way. I don't know if he's even still alive. And they needed a fix in the room. It was a beautiful sunny afternoon, and we were halfway through Rosalita and looked over, and they're kind of looking for a vein over there.
Oh my God! God.
And Bill just went, no, it's not here. No, sorry, and he just walked. And that was the end of the band. I think with the guitarist, we had like one rehearsal, but it was a memorable occasion. We did bump into each other at a yachts gig, which was the other Liverpool college band.
Who, you and Bill?
Well, Bill was at the gig, and I sort of waved, and I think he might have gone, "Oh shit, that drummer from that band with the drug addicts."
Yeah. Let's hope he never tells anyone.
Yes.
So the Slits, you joined the Slits. Tell us about the dynamic of that group, and who was in charge, and how did that work, and how was it suddenly having a bloke in the band?
Well, I think I probably replaced the loudest member of the band, not just because she played the drums, but Paloma, Palmolive, as christened by Paul Simonon, I believe. She was off the scale, kind of crazy. She seemed to just operate on her own internal metronome that never kept anybody else's time, and she played the song. She played it in the way she thought it should go. What was it like being the guy in the band? As I say, I'd met them. I'd hung out with the Slits, with Palmolive. I'd probably hung out more with Palmolive than Ari, certainly. Viv was the leader, for sure. When Viv walked in the room, even Ari kind of went, "Oh, Viv's here." And Tessa would Tessa always reminds me of Eeyore. Yes, I suppose so.
Munching thistles in the corner.
Yes.
There's always an Eeyore in every band.
Every band has one. There's always a Tigger too.
Yes,
I was the Tigger, and Tessa
Paul
was
McCartney is Tigger. George Harrison is Eeyore.
And so, unflappable Eeyore, yes, Tessa. And I miss them. It's funny, isn't it? Because, again, course of writing, one has conversations. Sometimes they're based on many conversations, as mine are. It's a conglomerate, an amalgam of years of one or two words. And it becomes a conversation. Amazing, because I can't remember me, Tessa, or Severin, later, having a lengthy conversation.
Which is another feature of bands, isn't it? The bands don't talk about stuff. The more important it is, the less likely they are to talk about it.
Yeah, they all say the same thing. Resentments just simmer away for years and then suddenly explode in the band.
When you stop being a band, you have hundreds of conversations and loads now. It's emails. It probably would have been faxes, wouldn't it? The fax machine wouldn't have stopped.
Yeah.
Spewing out more and more bile.
Have you shown this book to any of the people featured in it?
Has Siouxsie read it?
No, she hasn't. But let me see. I have been in touch with.
How do you know she hasn't read it? Because she said so.
No, I don't know. But I think if she has, she's.
The deafening silence might mean that she has read it
and snaffled a copy from somewhere.
Yeah.
The people I've spoken to are probably, strangely, ex-girlfriends, because I just wanted to check it was okay to say because there were big moments in my story, which were very big moments in their lives as well. Of course, how do I say that and then say, but I haven't contacted Siouxsie yet? And I say yet, and I suppose really I have tried to reach out over the interim years, not to say I'm writing a book, but the trail went dry and distant, and with both ex-colleagues, with Severin and Siouxsie. So I'd say it wasn't for lack of trying, but I feel they still think I am the person I was 20 years ago when I left the band, or when the band stopped. I didn't leave the band just stopped. But there is only really one account out there, and so I thought it was I should stick my oar in and give another account. But that was the authorized biography.
I was really interested in all the things you said about her. You know, when you joined the band and you talk about her being the ice queen of goth-in-waiting, but to you, she was a cackling, crazy tomboy from Chiselhurst. And I thought it was interesting that pattern emerges throughout the whole of the book. That there's this girl who's actually very different from our general public perception of her. And whether or not it must have been hard, whether or not she and to some extent the two of you were kind of imprisoned by the fact that people expected you to live a certain way. It's like when you go and live in that Gothic castle in France full of cats, that's exactly what everybody imagines you might do. But, you know, you've still got to go out and buy a pint of milk at the corner shop in the morning and, you know, and not be Siouxsie, as it were. I mean,
you would think so, wouldn't you? Yes.
Did you feel she was very restrained by what people expected her to be?
Restrained, no, not by people imposing their perception of, you know, who they thought she should be. Siouxsie would be aware of people. She would always have makeup on. She would sometimes be dressed up to go down to the vegetarian bio shop in our little town. For me, it was like everything was a rehearsal, because I had to rehearse everything in French before I went out to buy the baguette. That's just buying me time to think about what I'm going to say about Siouxsie. Because if you knew Siouxsie like I knew Siouxsie, oh, what a gal! There is a lot of black humor that was in us. I mean, you had Francis Rossi on the other week, and I know that I knew that, and Robert Plant was somewhere in there. There was a kind of boys' club humor that went on in bands. It wasn't too far from us. We had a crew we shared a crew with Motorhead, and so Lemmy was never too far away, and that kind of old school was still alive and kicking.
Right.
And we were, I suppose, you know, as I say, the Siouxsie and Severin certainly, and I think the original members, John Mackay and Kenny Morris, came across like the way that Suede arrived. I just thought the other day when they came out like dandyish and foppish and do you know who we are? And we are the beauty. We are the new. And I think there was an element of that, which wasn't with the Slits in the same way, and it certainly wasn't with the Clash. And if we ever wondered why we were not invited to do Live Aid, I think it answers the question. We appealed very strongly to a niche market, I think.
Were you resentful about not being asked to do Live Aid?
Oh, I think we were on tour and we feigned being ignored. But then a lot of other bands were too. And I just thought about it yesterday that it really was the resurgence of The Quo and Queen.
But it's also, it's quite an interesting point, isn't it? Because to take part in Live Aid, you had to be a bit of a joiner, didn't you? And the whole the deal with Siouxsie and the Banshees is we're not joiners.
No, we're not afternoon and we don't join.
Yeah, you had to kind of bounce on stage, giving a thumbs up to Duran Duran and Spandau Beyond in a moment, and we're the Banshees, and that didn't quite fit with...
No. Nick Kershaw, my mate.
Yeah, I couldn't do that. You see, it's interesting.
My son loves Nick Kershaw for some reason. The riddle or the puzzle, whatever it was called.
The riddle.
It's funny though. It's an interesting point because our kind of perception of the Banshees, I realised, was so much about photographs. It's not about what they did or about what they said. In fact, I can't think of any great events apart from the two guys leaving the group when you joined, where you thought that was a significant kind of moment. It's mostly about pictures. I mean, at one point, I think Anton Corbijn took a picture of Siouxsie as Charlotte Rampling and the Night Porter. So a lot of thought and effort went into the way you looked. Did you feel that was the important thing at the time?
It was something, I was put out when Nick Rhodes from Duran Duran had the same suit from South Moulton Street, which had cost me an arm and a leg. And I thought, geez, I can't wear it anymore. And I thought, sod it, I'd probably get more photographs out of it than Nick would. No, he didn't. I mean, Duran Duran were totally photos everywhere. It was lovely watching them arrive at Abbey Road Studios. We were in there doing probably Kiss in the Dream House or something, and Simon Le Bon would arrive, and the girls would just swamp him, and I'd go, "Morning, Simon," just gesture, because I could just walk in or cycling as I did in those days, and I didn't envy him. I kind of did, because they had a bigger studio, and the strange thing was they had a studio that nobody was in. There was like Nile Rodgers' engineer running a tape of drums around that Steve Ferrone had done weeks before somewhere else to get the right reverb from Studio One. So I was told. Could be a myth. But things like that were happening in those days, that studios would lie there with gear waiting for the creative moment. We did it ourselves and lost a lot of money, and I'm sure Duran Duran woke up to the fact that somebody was paying for all of this.
Yeah, it was them.
Yeah.
When you start doing all the interviews, you make the point that having a girl singer gave you an edge over the other bands, because you said you could talk about anything you wanted. I thought that was really interesting, because bands tended to just, when they got together and were interviewed, tended to be about what we stand for and our philosophy and our strategy. But with Siouxsie in the band, you said you could talk about absolutely anything. You talk about, I don't know, films and books and stuff, don't you?
Books and films were certainly there. That's what they got their ideas from. It wasn't listening directly. Siouxsie was a big fan of The Doors, but she would investigate deeper and ask questions about what was going on with Jim Morrison's voice. She loved that kind of background whispering that he did, where he tracked Riders on the Storm. It's there on every line, whispering away. And I think it was in that sense an advantage, and then the disadvantage kicks in because it's a female-fronted band. It's a tough world. Blokes together tend to, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's identification. That perhaps even somebody as huge as Madonna was around that time had to fight. And Siouxsie wouldn't suffer fools and wouldn't play the game. And perhaps that could have been our undoing as well. Not directly, because we lasted a long time.
In what way wouldn't she play the game? What do you mean by that?
I think it was the lack of, what's the word? Ambition. She was ambitious to a point. She always wanted to look right. She took great care, and she took great care over how she sang and the lyrics and the words that she put together, sometimes with Severin, sometimes on her own. But it was, yes, the image was constructed, but it was, as you said, it was the Live Aid thing. It was the all pals together in this wonderful world of music. And I think that was the anathema.
Yeah. So there must be offers to reform.
There came one. That's 2002, and really we'd been apart for 7 years at that point. The 7-year itch, I think, Coachella, down in wherever it is, near Pasadena on the West Coast, California. And there was an invitation came through, and it went through to Severin. And we and Siouxsie and I were in France, probably writing another album. And we downed tools and put the band back together. But we put the band back together as a 4-piece. And so we brought in another guitarist. We had to get a new guitarist called John, of course. Well, he wasn't John, he was Knox John.
But there must be more offers now. I mean, you must be getting offers all the time.
I've not heard any, so maybe they don't reach me here in Berlin.
If there was one, would you be keen?
I don't think I'd be keen. I was very keen when we got back together in 2002. I thought Siouxsie and I both thought it was going to be the beginning, a new time and another try. And we thought the rehearsals went great, and we thought we'd start writing new material. And then Severin had other ideas. So he'd arranged to meet the lady who's now his wife, and the new life was starting for him. But we only found out about it mid-tour, really. And as I do write, that it was a strange thing having almost the same thing had almost brought the band to its end way sooner. It certainly put on a long hiatus while Siouxsie and I went off to do the Creatures again. We did Creatures probably every 10 years when things were getting a little rough.
So high point of the whole story for you?
Wow. Gosh. See, this is only my second or third. The high point of the story, or the high point of doing the book? The high point of...
Well, the story of the Banshees, of the band.
The high point. You mean in terms of the career arc and...
Yeah, when you look back.
Yeah.
I think it has to be, and I would say with absolutely no deference to the guitarists and the people who worked for us afterwards, but there was something about the first peak with John McGeoch, the Spellbound Arabian Nights, Night Shift, Juju era. I think the last photograph I've dug out was one that I came across where the four of us, me, Severin, Siouxsie, and McGeoch, all holding the camera, bored but ferocious. Like, don't fuck, can I say that? But don't mess with us, because that's when when we mentioned it earlier. It's when the chemistry is right and the band is right on it. It's like anything you do is going to be correct for what you want to, without talking, because no big band discussion. After that point, after that lineup, there was always a discussion, because there was always a new guitarist who needed educating and telling, this is how you be a Banshee guitarist. And then he had to, whoever the unfortunate soul was, had to learn John Mackay, John McGeoch, probably a bit of Robert Smith, who popped his head in every now and then. And was me, So John Crothers had it hard. John Klein had the end position to hold. It was like substitutes coming on,
Right. Yes.
Very well put.
In the 10th, 10 minutes to go. So why is the book called The Absence?
Claire Conville, my agent, she had that title. And when we, on our first conversation, we spoke about, not about literary prowess or anything, we just talked, and we had a story in common somehow. Somewhere there was commonality. And she suggested that. And I felt it fitted because it was the death of my mum was the thing that changed my life. And the kind of question would be, and I think I asked it, if she'd lived, would I be talking to you now in this role? Because it was a role that I adopted. Now I'm talking to you like as the father of two children, but still out on a limb somewhere in Berlin. The old habits die hard, because the travel, but music is in there with it. But I do ask the question, would she have allowed me to be out at 13 in working men's clubs in Widnes? I don't think so.
A fair point.
So the absence is the absence of my mum, and then the absence of that nurturing and all of the things that go with that seemed. This is what I've been trying to fill the hole left by that, and it's okay today. You know, it has been cathartic. It has been. I wouldn't say traumatic, but I think the trauma was there. I just never realized.
Right.
Well, we were engrossed by it. And
thank you.
It's called The Absence. Actually, as I say, I've only got a proof copy, so I think
Yes,
the
no
full
point
title
holding
is-
that up.
I know.
It won't look like
Holding
that.
up a sheet of paper here.
Did you print that, Mark?
It's called The Absence, and I think that the subtitle is it Memoir of a Banshee Drummer? I think it is. Yeah.
It is, because I can show you this.
Oh, have you got one?
Oh, go on.
No, I haven't, but I've got this.
That's good. None of us have a copy.
No, this isn't. This one's Memoirs of a Dada Drummer.
Oh, right.
By who?
Richard Hulsenbeck.
So why are you holding that up when we're giving the opportunity to plug your own book?
I don't know, but that's where the kind of add-on title came from. And
Very good. Very good.
A Dada drummer. I think because punk was always like likened to the Dadaist movement and these kind of crazy guys who went on stage and did like tone poems and stuff. And I think there was certainly an element of that in the disregard for what went before, because that's what they were about. But I just like the kind of the rhythm of it. A lot of rhythm.
There we are. Everything from Dada to humble pies, Jerry Shirley. And I noticed also this book mentions Uriah Heep, actually. I had to mention that as well. And,
Wonderworld.
I've never met anybody who was a fan of Wonderworld by Uriah Heep.
No,
that man was Budgie.
I don't know about a fan, but it was imposed. We only had one 8-track cartridge in the car.
There you go. It happened to be.
And
That's right.
It's a long way to Newquay from St Helens.
Well, any members of Uriah Heep reading this will be so touched.
Thrilled.
It can't happen all the time. Lovely to talk to you, Budgie, anyway.
I'll carry on whilst we're off. Thank you, Mark.
Right.
Thank you, David.
All right.
Thanks for everything you've done for music.
Oh, thank you.